All right, Lissette, we're live, but we're not live because this is going to be pre-recorded. Say hello to the camera.
Hello.
Hello, future hello. How are you?
Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. What an amazing off-camera conversation we had. So we may have to do this more than once because there's a lot of experience and knowledge that you have that you can share with the audience. And I think that we're not going to be able to cover it all today, but I think you have I know you don't like the public eye, but I think you have a lot that you can offer to the viewing audience, and especially to the women realtor, or women, just the women out there in general. Actually, the men can learn a lot. I learned a lot from you just in a few minutes off camera. So, you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do the intro. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Vidal. I am president of Related ISG International Realty, host of the show you are watching today. Episode, I'm not sure because this is pre-recorded, one of the few that we do pre-recorded, but host of the show called TheCloserClub. And today we're sitting with one of the most prominent developers in South Florida, Lissette Calderon. Not only is she a prominent developer, but she's a prominent woman developer in a male-dominated world, and she's dominating them. So stay tuned because we got some really, really great information coming towards you. So let's get started. Now, Lissette, born and raised in Miami, one of the few. I was actually born and raised in Miami too. You were living on the Miami River, coincidentally. Mm-hmm. You went to the business Wharton School of Business at UPenn. You were in Wall Street. Now you're back to the Miami River. Tell us a little bit about your path to where you are today.
Absolutely, and to understand my past, I think you need to understand really where I come from and my roots. Being the first generation in the U.S. My parents were born in Cuba and came here in 1960. They were the first to arrive to the United States. We were one of the first, first of that group to arrive. And so to know them, and having communism taken everything away from them, I grew up in a household where I was constantly reminded that the only thing that not communism, not an economy, not anything or anyone could take away from you were two things, and that was your character and your education. Yeah. So from the very beginning, I had kind of those fundamentals and those basic principles. So I literally was born on the Miami River. That is where I came home from the hospital. Yeah. And I am a proud graduate of Coral Gables Senior High. Okay. So go Cavs. And from there, I went on to the University of Pennsylvania to the Wharton School of Business. I was the first person in my family to go to college. Yeah, and you went to Wharton of all places. You didn't only just get into college, but you went to Wharton of all places. It was, and it was one of those that I was very practical. I knew that I had X amount of time to go to college, and I had X amount of time before I had to go and make it out on the real world, because I didn't have a trust fund that I could rely on or anything to that extent. So I knew I had to graduate and have a real job, and to me, one of the things that growing up I always was driven to and I was passionate about was just kind of real estate and business and so forth. My father, nowhere to that extent. My father was involved in real estate to a smaller degree. So I grew up, going with him to job sites and asking what's stucco and what's block, and while everybody else was kind of, playing, I was, asking, why do you do this and why do you do that and why are you building it this way? So I grew up around construction and real estate and drywall and all of that. So I think it was always within me. My mom has been a licensed real estate agent, broker, since I can remember. Wait, hold on. Does she still have her license? She still has her license. Who does she work for? We have to recruit her. She still has her license, so she, she's been around. She's been doing it ever since I can remember. So I was, born essentially into a family of real estate. It's in your blood. It's in my blood, and it was something. So it just made a lot of sense. And then when you go to Wharton and you're really good with numbers, you do what every person who goes to Wharton that is really good with numbers. You do finance. Yeah. And so I was a finance major and a multinational management major because one of my life's great joys is traveling. Okay. And I love to see the world and travel the world. And I think, it's just, when you see the world and you experience different cultures in different places, you really can bring it back, to architecture and to living and to urbanism and to style of life and so forth. So it really kind of relates back to everything I do on a daily basis. So I did multinational management because I knew there was that part of me. But then I was ready to graduate in 3 years, but after 3 years I knew I wanted to stay a fourth year. There was no way I wanted to leave college in 3 years. It was just too much fun, and I literally was enjoying every single second of being at the university. So I had to pick a third major to stay. And to do so, I did what I was really passionate about, and so I majored in real estate as well.
Okay.
So I graduated from Wharton with a triple major in multinational management, finance, and real estate.
Triple major? I don't even have one. You triple, Jesus. Okay.
It was my excuse. It was my excuse to stay.
Party. I love
exactly. It. So I did that, and then I went on to Wall Street. Because that's what you do when you go to Wharton. You go on to Wall Street, and I was good at my job. I got a job, in private equity, which is, the big job everybody wants. And I got to travel, and I got to analyze, and I got to be involved in, IPOs and high yield debt offerings, and I was good at my job. But I knew I was never going to be great at it because I was just not passionate about it.
It's so important. So important.
I just knew that I didn't love what I did, and I could see my reflection in the mirror, and it wasn't that. I knew the person that wasn't looking at me wasn't my authentic self. I knew that I was checking a box and I was doing what I had to do, but it wasn't really what I loved. And when I looked at the lives of my managing director and other people that 20 years ahead of me, I wasn't sure that I necessarily wanted to be them either.
Interesting.
So after a year of doing it, I took a long, hard look, and it also took my mom flying up, who's an extremely intelligent lady, and by that time my father had passed away, which was extremely hard for me, and because I had wanted nothing more in the world than to have been able to do real estate with him.
Sure.
So although he did see me be accepted to Wharton, he never saw me go to Wharton because he passed away my senior year in high school, and that was probably the most life-changing event in my life to date. I grew up overnight, and so for that to happen, and then my mom went up and said, I'm not sure I recognize you, there's something in your eyes, I don't think you're that happy. And I said, Mom, I'm really not, but I feel that I'm disappointing you and I'm disappointing everyone if I don't stay. And she tells me, you're not disappointing me, you're not disappointing, the only person that you answer to is the person that's in the reflection. So, at that point I stayed on because, here I had this 4-year degree and I had this great job at this great company, and it was, what every single person wanted. And about 2 days later, this is before, there was, kind of email and e-docs, I received a one-way ticket to Miami from my mom.
Really?
And that was her way of telling me
that smile on your face.
That was her way of telling me that,
yeah,
to pursue what I was passionate about.
What I love most about your story, and I know you were at Related as well, and all that, and there's a lot more to the history there, but I'm sitting here and I wish, there are not many interviews that I sit in that I wish I had a pen, because I wanted to take notes, because I think there are 3 things that you said that are really key that I want to make sure the audience picks up on. Number 1, the most obvious, passion, right? No matter how much money you're making, if you don't have a passion for what you're doing, it doesn't matter. I think a lot of people say they want to be something, but they never look at the people that are in that position. Like you said, you looked at your bosses and you didn't really want to live that life. I don't think a lot of people ever do that. They say they want to be rich, they want to own a company, they want to do this, but are they looking at the people that own the companies? You wanted to be a developer. You probably looked at the developers and see what they did. I don't think a lot of people did that, so that's really cool.
Absolutely, and to me it was important, and it was important about kind of the authenticity and so forth. And I'm not going to say it wasn't challenging. One of the things that I always tell everybody and I speak to is, just make sure that, at the end of the day, this world is a pretty small place after all.
Yep. And
the only thing you've got, as my grandmother and my parents would always tell me, is your character and your education.
Yep.
But when you speak to character, that's your calling card. And you're going to meet people at every step of life, at all different walks of life. And, sometimes, this person is going to be your superior. Sometimes you're going to be their boss. But I think, at the end of the day, the fundamental human values don't change. And, be kind to people. And I think people remember that. And I got, in many ways, as a result of, where I was, it was just, through talking to people, through networking, and I would place a call.
Sure.
And they would say, absolutely, I can help you. Let me introduce you to this person. And then, you would talk to that person and, let me introduce you to this person that can help you. And I really think it was getting out there networking and speaking to people, and every opportunity that I had, sure, whether it was to go to a cocktail party or a networking party, I took advantage of. The way that I really come to Miami and to real estate is that at the University of Pennsylvania, there weren't many people that looked like me. There weren't many women. There weren't many Cuban women. I may have been the only Cuban woman at Wharton when I was there. And they said, we're having some people, we're having a dinner. This was the dean, and they're from Miami, and they happen to be Cuban. Do you think you being Cuban, can you make it to this dinner?
Sure.
And it was the same day, and I said yes. And I think that made all the difference in the world. So I always tell people, say yes. Say yes to as much as you can.
That's right.
Say yes to everything. Don't be afraid to say yes. And because I said yes to that moment, that literally changed the trajectory of being able to come to Miami and get the positions that I was able to get.
Would you say that was a breakthrough moment for you?
That was absolutely a breakthrough moment, because that person said, if you ever want to come back to Miami, and at that time, my mind was, I'll never forget, I got on that plane when I left the University of Pennsylvania into Wharton, and I said, so long, Miami. I am now going to, the Wharton School of Business, and I will live in New York, and I'm never coming back. And, lo and behold, a few years later, I'm sitting at this dinner, and he said, well, if you ever think about wanting to come back to Miami, give me a call, because, I may be able to introduce you to people. And sure enough, not only did I call him, but when I called him, he picked up and said, yes, come over to my office. And it was Carlos de la Cruz, who I will forever be grateful to. He's an incredible human being. And although I was not in his business and I was not in his line of work, he said, I know a banker that you would really like to talk to. Okay. And that banker was Adolfo Enriquez. And I met Adolfo, and Adolfo said, would you like to work for me over the summer? So I went to work with Adolfo over the summer, and that was one of the summers while I was at Wharton. And I forged an incredible relationship with him. And then, I graduated and I went on to New York. And when it was time, to come back, I remember, calling a few people, and again, I picked up, and made a lot of calls. And, one of the more interesting calls that I said, I said, I want to go back to Miami. I want to do real estate development. And one of the gentlemen said, well, you really need to think about banking, real estate banking, because there really is no role for women in real estate development.
Wow.
And he's still a developer today. I think he may be retired, but yes, he was a developer, and he was a family friend, a family acquaintance. And I think, really, from the generation that he came, I think he was giving me honest advice.
Sure.
I think he was legitimately concerned, saying, I'm not sure that you want to go down that career path, but real estate banking is terrific, and you really should consider that if that's your passion. So I also called Adolfo, and Adolfo said, great, when are you coming back? And I said, well, I'm coming back, but I'd like to do real estate development. And Adolfo, being Adolfo, who is also one of the greatest individuals I know, one of the best leaders I know, and exemplifies everything you want to see in a leader, said, well, if I can't have you, let me put you in front of a few individuals that I think may be interested in talking to you, and you may be interested in talking to them. And that's how my real estate career started here in Miami.
And now, so we're sitting at Pier 19, and we're going to talk about Pier 19 in a little bit, but we're in the Miami River District. Where do you see the Miami River District today, and where do you see it in the next 5-10 years from today?
Absolutely, and I think, and again, to go back to, I think it's, it's to see it, when I first looked at it, which was almost 20 years ago. I'm dating myself, dear God.
No, you're young. I didn't mention any ages because you've had a lot of success in your young age.
It was almost 20 years ago, but again, as I said, and I prefaced, I love to travel, and travel is one of my, life's great loves, and I also love to read. So two of my great loves, and especially, history and biographies and so forth, and Mesopotamia, was founded between two rivers, and kind of that's where civilization started. And then when you go to, most of the great cities in the world, they're on the banks of rivers. If you're in London, you're there. If you're in Paris, if you're in, again, anywhere. Sure. From Chicago to New York, all of these incredible cities, are based around their rivers, and their rivers are very much a part of who they are as a city, part of the urban core. And then, take Miami back to 1896, when it was one of the few cities that was founded by a woman, Julia Tuttle. Right. When she founded the city, she founded it on the banks of the Miami River, which made all the sense because, again, about transportation sure. and urbanization. So you fast forward, just over 100 years later, and it's, turn of the century, it's 2000, 2001, and I'm, here I am, I've got a great job, I've got a great career. At that point, I had just gone off on my own. I was doing, a smaller townhouse project and so forth. But I knew exactly who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be. and where my passion lied. And I knew that, my love was in urban living. And I kept looking at myself, and I realized that there were so many more people like me, that there was a need of, young professionals that were completely priced out at the market. At the time, everything was, kind of brickle.
Sure.
Or you could live out, in the suburbs, but something that was kind of at an attainable price point. For those of us that were young professionals, there was nothing. What I could do would be the very sexy thing, which is what I did, which is I lived with mom.
Yep.
If I didn't want to have a 1.5 hour commute, or if I did want, I could have, moved away. And so knowing that, and then having had the opportunity to live in New York, I had lived in a loft, and I knew that was just also an incredible kind of urban experience. And then I would say, lastly, having traveled and seen the river, maybe it was coming back this many years later, I couldn't understand how the Miami River was just so blighted and so neglected, and here it was at the heart of the city. So it was just this paradigm that I think everybody was just kind of blinded. It was the Miami River.
Nobody was paying attention to.
Nobody was really paying. Waterfront at the time was defined as bayfront.
Yep.
And so, having been to Chicago, New York, Paris, London, I'm thinking to myself, I mean, we've got this incredible jewel. Why is nobody thinking about this river? And why is nobody, really paying attention to it? The roots of the Miami River are in fact a working river, and I think that continues to be very much at the core of what the river is. I think there's nothing more interesting than seeing one of the tugboats go by with the cargo ships.
Amazing.
I mean, that's just so much fun to see, and I love seeing that. But I knew that one didn't have to be mutually exclusive of the other.
Sure.
I mean, I think for all great cities to work, they have to have synergies between the different uses. So I bought my first project, and that was Neo Lofts, and I broke ground on that in 2002. Okay. And that was my first high-rise, and I would probably say, if you say kind of what's your real breakthrough moment, I think it was probably that, because I think that was the moment where dreams became reality. And I think that's where, it wasn't just about the talk, but it was about the action that was put in place, because, there's goals, there's dreams, and then there's, what did you do that, what were the actionable things that you did to actually get there? Because I think it's I always say, mood boards are great and inspiration boards are great. But there's no free ride in life. That's just the reality. I tell everybody, I'm like,
that's awesome.
I'm like, there's no elevator to the top. You got to take the stairs, and that's just the reality.
So where's the river? I mean, right now we're sitting here. We're seeing some houses behind us getting refurbished or redone, remodeled. We're at Pier 19. You got the working boats back there.
Yeah.
5 years from now, what does this look like?
I mean, it's already beginning to look like what I think I dreamed of in the story. I was trying to tell people 20 years ago that they thought I was absolutely crazy. And that was that everybody could live together. I mean, when you come up the river, I love having people, when they visit, taking them on the boat and just coming up the Miami River. And, as I come up, not only can I point to, there's my Neo Lofts, there's my Neo Vertica, there's, Wynn, there's my Pier 19, but then to kind of come up the river and then you see the wharf and you see all these people at the wharf. And,
so we were talking about George Guerra before. Mm-hmm. So George Guerra, Andres Acion, Emmy Guerra, who owns the wharf, and we were all frat brothers. That's how we all know each other.
And I mean, what they've done there, but again, it speaks to kind of, the urban kind of core and the Renaissance and all the different uses coming together. And then I kind of go up and, I go to the, some of the old greats like, Garcias and Casablancas. And
here's our frat brother too.
They've been awesome and they've been incredible, and then you add some of the newcomers like Sea Spice and Kiki's to it, and you add crust, right across the way, and all of a sudden you start seeing, kind of the food component, and you see them at all hours, everybody's there, and I love it because I can arrive by boat in flip-flops, and I can arrive by boat dressed up, and it doesn't really matter because you feel just as welcome no matter, how you are, and
it's a big melting pot.
And
of everybody
then,
getting
to kind of, you kind of come up further, and now you see kind of River Landing coming up. And now we've got, Publix, and you've got, movie theater, and you've got all these other new uses that are coming in. So to really see the river, in less than 20 years, to have that vision of a river with different synergies kind of coming together is a dream come true. And for me, it's exciting. But again, I think, obviously we've got a ways to go. It's great when you start seeing, properties, where you see some of the older properties that maybe had been, abandoned, or neglected, or blighted.
Being repurposed.
People, you see, the next generation coming in and seeing them through the eyes of, this is beautiful waterfront. Let me put, some elbow grease and turn them around. So I think you're only going to see, just the rebirth, the rebirth already happened, the revitalization. I think now you're going to see kind of some of that maturity along the Miami River.
And now that people are here, it's just going to happen even faster.
Well, and now
the seal is broken, right?
Well, no, because now it's organic. Because now you still have the marine usage. You still have, you still have the tugboats that go by. Everybody loves being on their balconies and watching them go by. You've got the gorgeous 10-acre Sewell Park just down the road, just next to us here at Pier 19, and it's old Miami, if you want. I mean, literally the manatees are right there where you can touch them. We should drive by. So you really, want to see like the original Miami of, the Tequesta Indians. It probably doesn't get more authentic than that. So I think the Miami River represents an authenticity to Miami's roots that maybe no other neighborhood can offer.
Interesting. That's a great way to look at it.
And I love it for that. And so to see how far we've come is incredible, and to see all the different uses come together. And I think, the next 5-10 years, you're going to see the maturity of all these uses coming together.
So let's switch gears, because now you're starting to really go into Allapattah with some big purchases. So first off, where is Allapattah? Because everybody hears it. I don't think a lot of people know where it is. And what excites you about Allapattah? What's happening over there?
To me, Allapattah.
So where is it? Let's start there.
To me, Allapattah really is just a natural progression of being on the Miami River.
Okay.
The southern border of Allapattah is the Miami River.
Got it.
So, it's kind of, it makes sense. So it's like the north bank of the river is Allapattah. So Allapattah, is defined by, you take kind of I-95, you take, like 27th Avenue.
Okay.
You take the Miami River on the south, and then you take kind of northwest 36th Street, which is 112, that expressway. So you kind of take that quadrant. You can go maybe a little bit further west, but really kind of, about 27th or so. You take that quadrant, and within that quadrant, you've got the health district, which to me is extremely interesting, because if you think about the health district, after Houston, it's the second largest health district in the country.
Oh, wow.
So you've got, 46,000 of, the smartest individuals, working in that area. And as part of the health district, you've also got the civic district, which is, the county courthouses and so forth. So, the state attorney's office and a lot of that, that's there. So you've got about 46,000 people that are employed just directly in that area. Then just
makes sense now. Okay.
Just west of Allapattah, you've got Miami International Airport, with again some very high-paying jobs, and that's about 38,000 people. And then just outside of Allapattah, just literally on the other side of 95, you've got over 200,000 people working in the CBD. Central Business District.
I was like, CBD, really? Okay, that's interesting.
So really, Allapattah is the last of the original Miami neighborhoods that remains. And to me, what drew me to Allapattah, not only was it a natural progression, because I'm already on the Miami River, so it's kind of where I started my first project, Allapattah 17, which just broke ground. That one's really pretty much at the intersection.
Rental.
It's rentals, and that's kind of at the intersection where Allapattah meets the Miami River. So it was, it was a very normal, natural progression, but beyond the factors of kind of just the employment and the base and so forth, I love how mass transit very much plays a part of Allapattah. Allapattah has the metro rail that runs right through the heart of Allapattah, with three transit stops. So to me, that was also exciting. So to have that level of walkability and kind of that sense of neighborhood, and to be within the urban core. It just made a lot of sense, and it was a natural progression.
You just gave all the realtor viewers a college education on Allapattah, because that was information that I had no idea about. So it's actually got me, Albert. I got Albert, the vice president of our company, behind camera. We got to talk. So talk to me about, because you used to build condos, now you build rentals. We're at Pier 19. I shout out to Andres Sacion, Miami Real Estate Group, for representing the leasing here at Pier 19, which I know you guys are doing phenomenally well. Which one do you have a preference towards? Rentals or condos, and why?
And I'll best explain it as an analogy.
Okay.
Every building, whether you build it from scratch or you kind of turn it around like we did with Pier 19, which was a value add job that I just knew was an underutilized asset and I could reposition it. Every single one of these buildings, to someone like me and someone that takes this to heart. This is a baby. It's a labor of love. Every square inch, every square foot of the building. I mean, you're involved in everything from design to architecture, to paint, to art, to everything. I mean, it's a labor of love. I mean, it's a passion project. To me, every single job is a passion project. I mean, I literally, I think you're doing something right when on Sunday, a lot of people talk about the Sunday blues. I start getting, I can't wait for Monday. I can't wait to get into the office. It's just, that's how I'm wired. Like, I knew that's what was going to make me happy, and I knew that was what was going to drive me, where I could, look forward to Mondays. And so every project is a labor of love. But whereas a condo, it's this labor of love, and it's this beautiful baby, and you give it everything you have, but then it turns 18, and it moves away, and then that's it. You never see it again. Yeah. You never see this beautiful child that you've raised, because you turn over your child to a condo association and to a board, and that's it.
They get married and move on.
They really get married and they move on, and sometimes they like you more than other times. But the reality is, you're no longer, you don't have that vested. You no longer have that interest in that project because someone else has taken over that building. Whereas with a rental, because to me it's multi-generational, and it's, I keep them, I don't sell them. I'm not a merchant developer. I don't build them to sell them. I build them to keep them as part of my portfolio. It's like the 18-year-old, and then the 18-year-old can go to college, but then it comes back home. Yeah. And so you can continue to have, you continue to be a part of it, and then I think it just allows for more legacy. By continuing to have ownership and a stake along, with these projects, I can continue not just to be involved, because to me it's not just about the building you build, but it's about the community and the neighborhood. So by having this presence in here, I can do far more impactful things within the community that we operate in. Got it. So, we were able to do some great things at Sewell Park because we have this community and we have the stake here. And we were able to work, with the Miami River and the Miami River Commission because we have a stake here. Sure. Now we're able to work with, Allapattah, and the city and so forth because we've got a stake. So I think, when you're thinking about kind of the long-term best interest, and I think as you grow up, you also start thinking about your legacy and what do you want to be known for. Sure. You just don't want to be known about, for the beautiful buildings that you created, but what was the difference you made? And the difference was not just in, creating a lifestyle for my residents, which, I hope to do, and I hope to bring that urban living and set the pace for kind of the future of urban living, within the urban core. But what else did you do for the community at large? So when I look at the park and I realize that, in less than a year, the park has been completely revitalized. We did something well. At Neil Lofts, we revitalized Jose Marti Park. We worked with the city, and that was a park that had been closed since Andrew. And 10 years later, when we arrived, to the area, we were able to turn that around. So I think that, when you're a stakeholder, and especially as a landlord, you have a lot more say in what goes on. So
rentals is the way to go.
Rentals is definitely the way to go.
So 2 last questions and we'll wrap up. I know you're very busy. You're obviously, as we opened up, one of the most prominent developers in South Florida, but you're a woman developer, which is rare down here. So for the women viewers, what advice or tips can you give them on becoming a woman power player?
And I always tell everyone, when someone says, how do you see yourself as a woman developer? And my answer always is, I'm a developer. I don't see a difference. I am who I am, and I happen to be female, but that absolutely makes no difference in who I am or how I see myself. So I always say that I've never allowed, gender to play a role in, how I perceive myself and in the job that I do. You will always run into those that, the ignorance is on them. Got it. And as recently as recently as yesterday, I walked in with a gentleman into one of our engineers into a big meeting, and they asked him if he was the owner, and they asked me who I was. And that was as recent as yesterday. And I just laughed. And so after that individual was gone, I looked at the team and I said, and there is, an example of, but you just have to learn. It's called rhino skin. But I think, to become a power player, and I'm lucky and I'm blessed. I've got 3 amazing girls. Yeah. And they're 12, 13, and 14.
All right, so what advice are you giving them?
So, and it's kind of the advice that I give them, and it's probably the best advice I could give to any woman. I give the same advice that they gave me, which is about, the only thing in this life that you have is your character and your education. So I always tell them, be careful on the toes you step on today, as they may be connected to the ass you may have to kiss tomorrow.
You've said that so many times, and every time you say that, so my dad, Cuban, came here when he was like 14, 15. He went to Archbishop Curley, or at the time it was just Curley, not Notre Dame. Now it's closed, obviously. That's where I went. And the way he made it through high school, my grandparents were still in Cuba. He would cut the grass, he'd maintain the grounds at Curley and all that. And he always told me, he goes, because my real name's Alejandro, he always said, Alejandro, keep your powder dry, be nice to everybody, and the only thing you have is your word. Okay, so it doesn't matter what's on this paper. It doesn't matter. You want to put your head on the pillow at night, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and that you can shake somebody's hand and know that you're keeping your word, and that's the character. And I think it's a Cuban thing.
It is, and it does. It speaks, to character and to education. So I'm definitely, tough on education. And then the other thing I always tell the girls is, don't be afraid to fail. So every night, ask them, what'd you fail at today? I don't want to hear about what you did well, because if you did it well, that means you've already mastered it, or you've either already mastered it or it was easy. What did you fail at? Because if you failed at something, that means you pushed yourself, and you pushed yourself beyond the level of comfort. So every day I ask them, what did you fail at today? Did you fail at, you wanted to do the mile at X speed and you didn't do it? Did you fail that you wanted to move up to one level in math? One of my daughters, and the teacher came back and said, I don't think you're ready for that math level yet. I was like, great. That means you pushed yourself. And so, to me, every day I remind them, don't be afraid to fail, because I think failure is what holds people back from truly achieving their dreams. Yeah. And I always say, someone once told me not to bite off more than I can chew. And my response was, I'd rather choke on greatness than nibble on mediocrity. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the motto I've always lived my life. And
that's it's funny, because Albert and I were talking on the way down, and by the time this airs, we would have made the announcement. We're making a really big announcement to our company. And he's like,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's going to be a game changer for us as a brokerage. And we're like, man, we're scared. It's a big announcement. We could potentially lose half our agents. We'll know by the time this airs. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I said, I'm more scared of not doing it than I am of actually doing it. So I love that. What did you fail at today? That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Actually, we have coaching right after this. I'm going to open up coaching.
And I always say that. And like I said, there's no elevator to the top. You've got to take the stairs. There's no free ride. There's a direct correlation between work in and work out.
Sure.
I'm, even to this day, I'm, usually one of the last people to leave the office, if not the last. I enjoy coming in on Saturdays. And it's, quiet time, the phones aren't ringing, I'm not, being pulled in 10 different directions. But I think the only reason I can do that, and I can do that so happily, is because I'm passionate about what I do, and I love what I do, and I don't really believe in live work, when people ask to, live work, balance. I don't
there is no balance.
I don't buy into it. I think it depends at what stage in life you're at. I told someone that asked me that in the beginning. I said, this is very easy. I said, they were applying for an entry-level job. I said, let's just set the record straight. I said, what is our live-work balance policy here is? Live-work balancing policy is that you work, and when you get to my age, you get to live. I said, but what I was really trying to say is, you can't just arrive, and expect that you're going to get, the corner office. Yeah. I've vacuumed floors, I've painted, and this is with a Wharton degree, and, graduated top of my class with 3 majors. And I think what set me apart and allowed me to work with some of the individuals that I did, and allowed me to earn their respect, because you can't demand respect, sure. You can only earn it, was that they saw that it was the work ethic, that I was willing to work, not just smarter than everybody else, but I was willing to work harder, and I wanted it more, and there was that hunger. So I always say that, and to this day, I still don't buy into, there's any live-work balance. I believe it's live-work blend.
Sure.
And when you do what you love,
you're always working. You're always on.
They just come together.
We talk about that all the time. You're always on.
I closed. I finally did my trip of a lifetime that I had been dreaming of. I went to Africa a few weeks ago, and I was in Africa for 3 weeks. And while I was in Africa, I closed a really large deal while I was there. And that's just kind of the way it was. I took 2 days, and I stayed in my hotel for 2 days, and I worked those 2 days. And because of technology and what technology allows us to do, it allows me. Are there people that, I'm not saying you don't need to disconnect, and you shouldn't, and so forth. But I subscribe to it. It's really a live-work blend. And when you love what you do, it's not even work.
Actually, so Albert Carrillo, his wife is Christina Pappas, Her dad is Mike Pappas, owns Kai's Real Estate. His father was Ted Pappas, and he passed away many years ago. But I remember I worked with Mike when I was 19 years old. I was his secretary. That's how I started real estate. So Mike would give me stuff, and I'd write his letters for him. And his dad one time gave me a letter, and he turned it around. It was all torn up. I'm like, oh my God. And then we started talking about just work in general. He goes, Alex, if you love what you do, you never have to go to work again. And I was like 19 years old, and I will never, ever forget that. All right, we need to wrap up.
Right.
Last question. Book, and we ask this to every guest. Book, podcast, or TED Talk recommendation for the audience.
I'm a book lover.
Okay, so what's your favorite book? What's a book, like, if you were to recommend one book to the audience to read, what would you recommend?
My favorite book of all time is the Aristotle Onassis' biography.
Okay.
I think that was just incredible. And then my favorite kind of book about more recent is a book called Peak.
Okay.
And it's about reaching your peak in whatever it is that you choose to do.
Sure.
And it speaks to kind of work ethic and repetition, but how to do it intelligently. And I think I think it brings a very interesting perspective and a very realistic perspective to to the business world. So I absolutely love that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Peak. And do you know who the author is?
I can't think of it.
That's right. We'll add it in the comments at the bottom.
Yeah,
of the
it's Peak.
Lissette, I'm going to go around the camera, turn it off. Thank you so much for your time today. If you probably haven't seen, actually I know you haven't read it. If you ever go into your Instagram and you go into your unread messages or whatever, or message requests, you're going to see like 100 from me requesting this interview. That's what it takes.
And I have to apologize
No,
because
you don't have to apologize.
I will get better. I still don't have LinkedIn, much to the dismay of everybody in my company. So I have been promised that someone's going to build LinkedIn for me. And I don't know how to check Insta messages. I don't even know how to do an Insta story yet.
That's very clear. No,
and I don't even know how to do an Insta story.
Lissette, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was fun. Thank you.
Any parting words before we leave?
Best of luck with your new announcement. I have no doubt it will be great. And to everybody out there, thank you for watching. And if I ever can do anything to help anyone, that's what we're here for.
Just don't send her a message through Instagram.
Yeah.